Welcome to the One Bloody Take Movie Podcast, where we go back in time several decades to browse the aisles of your local video store. I'm Paul.
And I'm Russ.
And today we're renting the 1974 movie Black Christmas. So get your popcorn and snow caps ready while we give you our bloody take. Let's not waste any time on this gem. Let's jump right into the trailer. And
it's a long one.
The trailer? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take a look.
A high school girl's been murdered. Mr. Harrison's daughter is missing. And now at the house where she lives, the other girls are getting obscene phone calls.
Yeah, what I've done is I've tapped his phone so that when it rings, it'll ring at the station house, too.
There was a little girl murdered over in the park tonight.
Yes, I heard.
Your phone's ringing.
Hello?
Hey, Mommy. Hey, baby. Baby, all right, Mom.
Who's there?
I know you're there, now, baby. You answer me, it's me. Mommy. Come here.
Where's Agnes?
You
Why are you doing this?
This is Graham. It's group 140, terminal 55.
Remember those idyllic scenes out of your childhood? Crisp winter nights, star bright, sleigh bells, crackling Yule logs, candlelight glistening off of shimmering Christmas trees, chestnuts roasting over open fires, carolers beneath snow-covered window ledges. Remember those. Remember them well. After Black Christmas, they'll never be the same again. Black Christmas, starring Olivia Hussey, Keir Dullea, Margot Kidder, and starring John Saxon as Lieutenant Fuller. If this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight.
All right, so basically they just played the movie for us.
Yes, they did.
You know, having watched the movie, somehow this trailer made the movie seem worse.
It did.
The movie is a lot less convoluted than the trailer was, and the movie's a lot less horrific than the trailer seemed to make it, and not in a good way. All right.
No, I don't think the trailer did it any favors.
No.
They could have stopped just shy of after a minute, where they zoom in on the attic and we see Claire and Mrs. Mack,
Yeah, that would have been perfect.
and end it right there, because that's great. We get the exterior of the house with the Silent Night song, and like really quick splices of violence. Like it's perfect
And I don't
for a minute, and then it just gives everything away.
and I don't know why we got that British gentleman at the end of the trailer either. Like
Yeah.
that didn't make any sense to me.
No, because at no point is this movie ever narrated, or there's someone that sounds like that in the movie.
No.
So
Yeah, it doesn't take place in England. There's the one guy who looks like he should sound like that, but nobody actually sounds like that in the movie.
And usually when we get these types of voiceovers, it's the typical in a world where,
Right.
and they're doing it throughout the entire thing. He waits like
Yeah.
over 4 minutes before he starts talking. So when he does talk, it's really weird.
It's like it's shocking.
Yeah.
All right. So
Especially after watching the movie first
Well-
and then watching the trailer.
yeah, that's what I said. Having watched the movie,
Yeah.
the trailer made them.
Yeah.
The trailer was worse than the movie.
Yes, it was.
So we're watching Black Christmas. First thing right off the bat, the director here is Bob Clark, famous Philadelphia Flyer and movie director. He did Porky's, and he also did Christmas Story. So this man has an incredible amount of range.
Yeah.
and
And even stuff like Baby Genius, like it's all over the place.
yeah. But he's got this Black Christmas, he's got Christmas Story, and he's got Porky's, which are just absolute classics. Like
Yeah.
this guy has done well for himself while not really having a name that that people know at all. The movie stars apparently, as best as I can tell, everyone he could find that was available in Canada at the time that they were filming it, including but not limited to Margot Kidder and Andrea Martin from Second City TV.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other people sprinkled in there too. You get John Saxon, who is Lieutenant Thompson in Nightmare on Elm Street. So, but this is obviously before that. So he's got himself a pretty decent cast. He's a pretty strong director, and what we get out of that is a movie about a killer who terrorizes a sorority during Christmas break.
And a lot of the guys in this movie were also in Porky's. So he works with the same people a lot too.
Right. Again, whoever's available to him in the Canadian territories.
But it was shot in the US, which is even more perplexing. Because even the beer that Margot Kidder is drinking is a Canadian beer. So it's almost like they just brought it with them.
You got
I don't know. Yeah.
some kind of tax incentives to come and shoot in America. So unlike most of the movies that we focus on, this is an incredible movie. This is a downright classic, and the more times I watch it, the more I can't understand how it kind of got panned when it first came out. I know that like history has rewritten itself as far as what people feel about this movie, but when it originally came out, it was not well received. And I have a hunch as to why, but I really overall can't understand how critics could watch this movie and come away with anything more than this is a brilliant movie.
It's go ahead.
And to me, the thing that Bob pulls off the best here is that you're not really watching a horror movie. You're watching a mystery. You're watching a detective movie, and it just happens to revolve around a psycho killer. You could take out the blood, and you would still have an incredible movie about these detectives trying to solve this crime and the series of crimes that are happening over Christmas.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because this is more of a movie that has horror elements in it than an actual, like what you think of when you think of a horror movie.
Right.
So back in 1974, somebody's watching this. It's shot just like, as you said, like a murder mystery detective movie type of thing, and then they keep interjecting the horror. So it's done so well that if you're not there to see a horror movie, the horror is probably going to take you out of it because you keep forgetting that's what you're watching.
I could see that, and I guess for that period of time, I guess I could see the opposite being true too, where like you're lining up to see the slasher flick, and although was slasher flick really a thing in 1974?
No,
not so much, right? So
this predates Jason Voorhees or Friday the 13th by 6 years.
Yeah, so I don't know. I guess maybe that's the thing. Like, there's no set anticipation. Like, there's no set expectation for the critic when they walk into this movie in 1974. So maybe they just truly didn't understand what they were watching.
And I could see people not liking the ending.
The ending is cold. I like the ending a lot. But
yes, I mean, if you need everything wrapped up and all the loose ends tied, you're not going to like a movie like this.
Right. And nowadays, especially when it comes to the horror genre, people would complain about this ending, leaving everything too open, and it sets up the sequels and all that kind of nonsense. But again, at that point in time in 1974, that wasn't really what they were doing. They weren't setting up franchises. So that open ending is just, you're just walking away just empty. And I think that's phenomenal.
No, I have no problems with the uncertainty of how things ended. That's fine. Although there's one issue I have, but not due to the uncertainty, and I'll talk about that at the very end.
So first things first, the most important discussion we're going to have tonight, is this a Christmas movie?
Well, I mean, if Die Hard is a Christmas movie, this is a Christmas movie.
So I disagree, and here's why. So Die Hard is 100% a Christmas movie because it is necessary for it to be Christmas for certain critical pieces of the movie to happen. There's got to be the reason that John McClane goes out to the West Coast. There's got to be a reason that the building is basically empty. There's got to be a reason that security is on skeleton crew. There's got to be a reason that there is a group of people in the building after hours, drunk-ish, and not paying attention to their surroundings. And Christmas is the reason for all of those things. So you take that particular holiday out of there. People don't get together at the office for a 4th of July party, right? Things like that. So you needed Christmas as the backdrop. Otherwise, these revolving components don't line up correctly to have the rest of the movie happen the way that it does. With Black Christmas, I don't think Christmas was a necessity in this movie.
The only thing that Christmas provides is a reason to empty the house, mostly. So the girls are going home.
But that was the thing. Like, they didn't really empty the house.
About half of them left.
Yeah.
That we saw. There were other girls at the beginning, and they went home, and then there was talk about the ones that were staying. And we also need a reason for the father to come and get Claire.
To be worried that she hadn't come home.
Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, this could be any break. This could be the start of the school year, right, where everybody's not there. This could be the end of the school year. So it's not dependent upon Christmas. It's just dependent upon an event where students will either enter or leave.
Right. It could be fall break for all we know.
Yeah, fall break. Those don't work out well either.
So right off the bat, it's not a Christmas movie and it's not a horror movie. But this is what we watch as a horror Christmas movie. And again, it's a brilliant movie. So
yeah, and I'll watch it during Christmas.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they had the Christmas lights are up and all that stuff. I get it. All right, so let's walk through this thing and talk about it.
All right.
We get right away. We know where we are. We're in a sorority. They're laying that out pretty bare for us. We're understanding that there's a lot of chaos because, as you said, the girls are packing up to head home for the holiday, and that takes some work. And there's blatantly somebody kind of spying in on the house, paying attention to things. We don't get any insight as to who they are, why they're there, what they're up to. Typical stalkerish behavior. And we can see we see Barb is worried. Somebody's left the door open. but this is par for the course for, you know, all this chaos that's happening. But we see somebody kind of sneak up into the attic while all of this, you know, while all this is happening, all this motion is going on. There's nobody notices, and then the phone rings, and the girls are getting a prank call from someone they're clearly familiar with, because Jess answers the phone and yells out, "It's the Moaner." Like, they've had these phone calls before. Right. And they gather around and they listen to this call, and the call is kind of perverse, a little scary. And the girls don't seem completely petrified by it, but they're not thrilled that this is happening. This is very obvious.
Right. Barb is treating it like a joke. Claire seems a little worried, and the rest are about in the middle.
Right. Which brings me to a side point again, you know, from 1974 to 2025. Can you do a movie predicated on prank calls anymore?
No.
I don't even answer the phone when people I know are calling. So I'm certainly not answering the phone for people that I don't know.
Cell phones and caller IDs have killed this type of interaction.
Yeah, you need a whole other approach. You can't be like a sinister crank caller. You can't be the heavy breather on the phone anymore, unless you can start spoofing phone numbers and make it seem like it's coming from their best friend. Which
would then make the killer educated,
right?
And you can't always have that,
right?
That would not work in this scenario. I do really like the way the movie started out. We get a nice, peaceful shot of the exterior of the house. I love the way they shot the lights, where the lights are almost like burning, as just opposed to being on. So we get like a comfortable, relaxing shot of the house that you can relate to Christmas. So you're going to think about happy things, right. And within moments, you realize it's not going to go well for the people inside. And the camera work here too, I really like. We don't follow the girl that goes into the house. We follow the viewpoint of the future killer as he's looking from window to window and tracking the person that's walking through. So right off the start, I'm just like, this is a good movie.
Yeah.
They're putting that much thought into this. This is going to be a good movie.
Yeah. So during this particular call, we meet Barb, and we see what Barb's all about, because she starts kind of taunting you know, our stranger on the phone, and Claire's upset with this. Claire doesn't want Barb taunting, and Barb kind of writes it off and makes fun of Claire. And Barb's pretty much an asshole throughout the whole movie. Like that's kind of her role in this is a mostly drunken asshole.
And even with this, Claire asked the right question. Could that be more than one person?
Right.
And Barb's like, no, it's the entire choir. Like, so Claire's suggesting that all of these voices are different, or could be the same person instead of multiple people, which they kind of think it is, and understandably so.
So the call's over. Claire retires to her room, and we meet Mrs. Mack, the house marm, the drunken house marm. This is a theme with these women, is that a lot of them like to drink quite a bit.
And she hides booze everywhere.
Yeah, she does.
So like everywhere throughout the house, and okay, that's fine. Whatever. You know, you're in a house full of late teenage or early 20s girls. So, you know, the chances at a sorority is they're going to be drinking. So you want to hide your own. That's fine. Hide it in the book. That's fine. Hide it in the closet. That's fine. Hide it in the upper deck of your toilet and then pull it directly out and drink directly from the bottle. That is not fine. That is not fine at all. You pour that into a cup if that's what you're doing. If you're so desperate where you need to hide the liquor tied to a string in the upper basin of your toilet, you need to pour that out and not drink right from the bottle.
Listen, I don't know if you know how toilets work, but like the poop doesn't go up there. That's just clean water.
Yes, I know that. But all the calcium, or like calcium from the water, or the mineral buildups that's in there and everything, it's just, And chances are, if you're fixing a toilet and it doesn't flush, it's because you attempted to flush it and it didn't. So that means you have to put your dirty hands into the toilet to put the chain back on the lever or something along those lines. It's it's not water I want to drink from. Plus, in colleges, it's probably where most upper deckers take place. It's not a place I want to drink from.
I mean, ultimately, what this comes down to is if you're that dedicated to drinking, you're not thinking about those other parts of this. Plus, whatever she was drinking was like 300 proof, so it was probably killing all the bacteria anyway. So she's good.
Yeah, good point.
So while Claire's in her room, she's got a cat with her because that's what they do in those sororities. They got a lot of cats, and we're made aware that there's someone in the closet behind the dry cleaning, and this person starts making cat noises, and so Claire starts going towards to see what's happening. And this is where Claire gets suffocated, and Claire is Claire's the first victim that we see.
Yes.
There may be other victims, but Claire's the first one that we see. She's suffocated by the garment bag, and it's a cutaway scene. You see what's happening, you know what's happening, and then they cut away from it, and because her whole head is covered, she's not going to be able to scream. She'll struggle a bit, I'm sure, but probably not enough to make noise to overcome all of the other chaos that's happening in the house that you would notice one person, say, kicking their feet on the ground or whatever it might be.
Right, because they're doing the party downstairs still.
Right.
And Mrs. Mack is opening up her present.
Right.
So all the girls are loud, yeah. And I love the back and forth with the points of view, where Claire's staring down the closet, and then the killer's staring down Claire, and then Claire's staring down the closet, and they just keep going back and forth. Again, I just really enjoyed the way this movie is shot.
Yeah, the whole thing is well thought out for this scene. So Claire's dead, and the killer obviously is now in the house and walks kind of further into the house and is moving Claire's body. And then we see the attic door shuts, and we figure that that's where the killer is existing and where he took Claire's body for hiding.
Yes. Yeah, and I love to just in this movie, less seems to be more. Because a lot of times I will complain that, okay, well, I would have liked the kill scene better if it was on camera. Or there needed to be more there needed to be more gore. There needed to be more blood. This was perfect. Even not seeing him actually pull her body away and just seeing the shadow cast on the wall, I think is creepier than actually seeing Claire's body tossed over his shoulder as he's walking to the attic.
Yeah.
So, and this is a consistent theme throughout this movie. Sometimes there's some blood, but most of the time, the worst of what took place is in our imagination.
It's off screen, and it makes it, when it's done right like this, it makes it more sinister.
Yes.
Because probably what you're imagining in your head is far worse than anything that they could depict on the screen with the special effects that they can produce.
And we also get the killer rocking Claire back and forth in a rocking chair in the attic while singing a nursery rhyme, and the voice is very childlike, and based upon the little bit that we've seen of the